Okay, so today we're going to be turning these pieces of styrofoam into some stackable heels. There's different thicknesses and sizes, anywhere from 1/2 inch to 1 inch. You can do whatever size you want, but make sure to stay tuned to the end of the video so I can explain why I chose to use these sizes and not larger shapes and sizes. So today's project is the perfect project for any beginner. It's not only going to fill out your table, it's also going to give you all the basics of terrain making that you'll need to know. And for this project, you're going to need a little hot wire cutter. It's just a small investment. It's 25 or 30 bucks on Amazon. And I will have a link in the description if you want to help support the channel to this exact hot wire cutter. And it's pretty reliable and cuts really well. Holds up pretty good and comes with a few extras, including different heads for this tool, which is great. So check out the description. I think this exact one was $26 or something like that. Don't quote me on that, but still under 30. And the reason we need this is because we're going to be cutting these in stacks. And you want to work in a well-ventilated area. Have a fan going. I have a fan going above my desk. And if you want to be extra safe, if you feel like you're breathing in a lot of it, make sure you wear a mask. So with this, I can take these pieces, turn this guy on, and take as many as you can hold in your hand, line it up as good as you can, and just make some jagged cuts along the sides. Like that. And then when it all comes off, it's going to be looking like that. And we're going to do that all the way around these heels. Now, I'm not going to show me cutting all of these in the video, but at the end of the video, I'm going to include all 50 pieces and show you guys how I set up this terrain to go with a lot of different games. Like I said, just hurry and do this. If you want a little bit more detail, you can crisscross a little bit. Not detail. If you want to add a little bit more variation, you can kind of crisscross things a little. That way they don't all end up being exactly the same. And we will be adding even more variation in just a minute. Right there, we got several different heels, all cut at the same time. Say you want to cut more than just like a few pieces. This is about 6 inches. I have this Proxxon bow, and it extends more than 16 inches, so you can do a big, tall stack with one of these guys. And I have this because I make a lot of these heels every week. Otherwise, it would take me hours and hours to make this kind of stuff. So, now it's a little bit less powerful, a little bit less hot, but it does the job just as well. If you're going to be doing a lot, or you're going to be doing thicker ones, this is definitely worth the money. I'll have this one linked in the description too if I can find it on Amazon. It's a lot more than this. I can't remember exactly how much it is. I think it's like 80 bucks or something like that, but it's well worth the money. Okay, so there's going to be lots of different ways to texture one of these heels. One of the most common ways is crumpling up aluminum foil and just rolling it on everything. I also have this texture roller that I made. That works pretty good. Just about the same as that, except for I don't lose this. And I have a little end piece that I can add extra details. Or you can just find a piece of rock or asphalt and pound it in. You can do it all over both sides and make it reversible if you want. But for this one, I'm just using the aluminum foil. And I'm just going to do the top, because the sides don't really matter as much. It'll still look good. You can texture the sides if you want. You can really texture the whole thing if you want. like I said, and make it reversible where it's painted one color on one side and another color on the other, or grassy on one side and stone on the other, whatever you're going for. But for these ones, we're doing one-sided heels. These are my standard modular heels. So we're just going for that, just that texture. See, that's good texture just with the aluminum foil. I mean, I did use the other two things. There's an infinite number of ways you can find texture. If you see an impression that looks like rock, just use that. And then I like to chip off some of these edges. And you can do this all the way around, or all over it, on both sides, or whatever. I was doing it on one corner a little bit, like this. Just random pieces coming off, different layers. This is going to add a little bit more texture and give it a little bit more of a rocky look. Like that. And if you want, you can keep gouging out bigger pieces, make it look more realistic. Like I said, this is my standard heel. It's good enough. I'm going to add a little bit more texture to it when I do the painting process. You'll see that coming up next. Right now, it might not look like it's very much texture, but in the end, this looks really good. Now we're going to start painting it black. And a lot of people in this hobby will use Mod Podge mixed with black craft paint. That's all fine and dandy. I use house paint for mine. I feel it does just as good of a job without costing as much money. Because if I were to buy 1 gallon of Mod Podge, it costs about $50. And then I'd also have to buy a few things of black craft paint to make a whole gallon, because you got to do 50-50 about. But I find just high quality black house paint. This one was $30 for the whole gallon. Works a lot better, in my opinion. It has better coverage, and it hardens up just about the same. Now you can just use black craft paint and paint it, but that really isn't going to harden up as good unless you put a whole bunch of layers on it. So just my recommendation would be to use at least the black house paint. And like I said, it's all fine and dandy to use Mod Podge mixed with black craft paint too. That hardens up just as good. And today I'm just using a cheap bristle brush to paint on this first black undercoat. Pretty straightforward step. I'm just doing 1 layer here. But if you really want, you can do a couple if you want it to be a little extra durable. Especially if you're just using the black craft paint, I would definitely do a couple. If you're doing a mixture like Mod Podge and paint, you probably only need 1 layer. But extra layers don't hurt. Another little tip I have is to wear a vinyl glove, either a vinyl glove or a nitrile glove, just some sort of rubber type glove. That way you can handle it without leaving fingerprints. That, or just be really, really careful. Like that. Now I'm going to set it in the front of a fan, and it should be dry in about a half hour or so. Then I'm going to paint the bottom, set it in front of the fan again. And so we'll get back to this in about an hour, and we'll paint it up real nice. All right, and this is just a view of all the heels that I have drying right now. It's a total of 50. I just have it set up on an 8-foot table with just random old boards. So after that dries, we'll get into actually painting. Now it's time to paint this guy up. And I'm going to be using a piece of this automotive sponge to paint with. I'm just going to cut a piece off. We'll save that piece for another one. Like that. Cut that piece in half. Gonna cut off these sides. Then, just to get a little bit more variation on my sponge, I'm gonna rip out some of this. You can also buy a more natural sponge and just keep rinsing it out. I use these automotive sponges because I tend to go through a lot of them. And it just saves a little bit more money. Honestly, if you're just building terrain for yourself, you could get one whole automotive sponge and it'll last your lifetime. So consider that. That's what I'm going for. Then we're going to need a few colors. These are all going to be apple barrel colors today. And we want to paint these hills gray, like stonish gray. But we want to make it a little bit warmer than just gray, so we're adding some of this territorial beige to it. And I'm just going to add a line of this pewter gray, which is a little bit darker. It's like a darker medium gray. And then this is a light gray. It's granite gray. Just like that. I'm going to kind of mix those two together just to get a little bit extra variation. And then add a line of this territorial beige. And you want to experiment with whatever colors you're using. You don't have to go with a basic hill like this. Say if you're doing like an underdark setting, you could do like blue and purple and gray. It'll make a really cool look. So just consider that when you're picking your colors. Experiment a little bit. It's fun. Then we're just going to load up this sponge, make it look nice and variegated. Like that. And then just start adding our color to our pieces. And this is going to add more texture to our pieces, and it's going to be more time effective. And again, I am wearing gloves just to prevent some fingerprints. There we go. Just like that. And then I'm going to put it in front of a fan again. I'm going to do all 50 pieces just like that. And then I'm going to put them in front of the fan again. And we'll get on to the next step after that. Alright. This guy's dry. Painted black on bottom, everything. We're going to be doing a dry brush. So we're going to be using antique white as a dry brush highlight. I'm going to load a little tiny bit of paint on our brush. Then take a paper towel and wipe most of it off. And then just hit the edges of everything. And then just lightly go over the top to add a little bit of detail. We got ourselves a stone hill. Looks pretty good. Now we're going to add a little bit of moss to that hill. So I'm going to take a little bit of dark green, a little bit of light celery colored green. Oh, maybe we're almost out of that one. And I'm using this chip brush. I'm just going to lightly dab some of this on and get it worked into the brush just a little bit. You want one side to be lighter than the other side. Like the dark green on that side and the light green on that side. And then just sparingly add it like it's moss. This way you don't have to buy flocking materials and all that stuff. It's not really necessary. Though you can add flocking materials and make it look a little bit more realistic. There's moss flock that you can get that can really make this stand out. But I think just like that, it looks pretty darn good. This is why I say it's a beginner friendly one. This hill doesn't take a bunch of supplies to make. You just have to buy the XPS foam, which you get from Home Depot or Lowe's or any hardware store should have it. If not, you can get it on Amazon. It's a little bit more expensive on Amazon, but it should be enough for any terrain project that you're doing. I was just going to gloss over the varnishing step, but I decided since I'm trying to make a beginner-friendly video, we'll just go over varnishing. You can spray varnish things if you want. Just make sure to hold it at a distance or it's going to melt the foam. That said, I don't have any spray varnish on me, so I'm not showing you that today. So we're going to be using this polyacrylic varnish by Minwax. This is matte finish. Their matte finish is a little bit glossy, but it actually looks pretty good once you get it on. Normally I water this down a little bit and spray it through my airbrush. But today, we're going to be painting it on. Sometimes I paint it on, depending on how thick I want it. And make sure this is completely dry. Otherwise, it's going to smear the paint, because this is pretty potent varnish. So just a little bit of varnish. Try not to go over it too much. Like I said, it might smear the paint. So just be careful applying it. And I really prefer this Minwax varnish over spray varnish any day because, I don't know, it just feels like it protects it more than anything. Some people also coat their stuff in Mod Podge. You can do that too. Just don't do it in PVA glue, or if you do put a layer of PVA glue on it, make sure to keep it away from any sort of liquids. I don't think it's worth chancing there being liquid around because PVA glue is water soluble. Supposedly Mod Podge isn't, so if you have that on hand, feel free to use that. There we go. It's done. It's a little bit glossy right now, so I'm going to throw this in front of the fan so it dries, and then we're going to be setting it up a few different ways. So stay tuned. This isn't just about the crafting part. This is also about how to use it, and a lot of people get confused about how to use these. So stay tuned if you want to know the secret to using these. Alright, here's all 50 pieces set up on my desk. And as you might be able to see, this would be perfect for any role-playing game setup. You know, these guys can jump up on all these ledges and whatnot. Come around to all these areas, have a bunch of different battles, or even set up like a dungeon, outdoor dungeon like this. Just have yourself a vinyl mat, a bunch of stackable hills. And really, if you don't want to make them, I'd be happy to make them for you. So if you're interested, I sell these in sets of 10. So a lot of people get confused about how to use these. Some people say they're too small or whatever. But as you can tell, I set this up as one large hill. You can set these up in any sort of shape that you want. So this is just one massive hill, which is going to be good for blocking line of sight with war games like Warhammer. You can even stack them high enough that it blocks line of sight for vehicles and big things like that. Or if you absolutely need to block line of sight more, you can stack them on their side. Even the half-inch ones will stack decently on their side a little bit. Like that. And yeah, it's not the most realistic, but for gaming purposes, it's perfect. This kind of thing. We can arrange these more than just hills. For instance, you want to make a big arch. You can do that. Like so. And you know, you've made yourself quite the significant piece of terrain just by stacking these hills. And stacking this one upside down, even underneath, you're going to be able to, well, you can't see very good. But if somebody looks under there, you're going to be able to see it. I say that looks pretty good for modular terrain. I consider 10 as one set. You can stack them pretty high. Just one set. Oh, messed up there. False advertising. That's one set. Make pretty good rock spires just with that. After this, I got some glamour shots of some desert ones that I made and how well it goes with some acid terrain. It's a little set that I made for somebody. If you happen to be interested in some more beginner-friendly terrain, I'll have a video linked at the end of this video that shows you how to make boulders that'll go along really well with terrain like this. Just a little bit of scatter terrain. And that's beginner-friendly as well. And from there, the sky's the limit. Now, let's get into some more glamour shots.